Lisa Torres, Senior Planner for the Planning and Development Services for the City of Tacoma. You are attached to, you live, breathe, and eat Home in Tacoma project. And we are back to talk about the implementation phase. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is,
We're getting there.
It's huge. So let's get an overview of where we are, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going.
Yeah, so we've been working on the Home in Tacoma project for several years now and been honored enough to be here multiple times talking about it. But for folks that maybe haven't heard of Home in Tacoma, it really essentially is a citywide rezone to allow more housing types throughout our residential areas in Tacoma so that we can get more units. So it really lends to housing choice and affordability throughout our neighborhoods of Tacoma that we know that we're struggling with.
People have a voice. Whenever you speak, I always hear that in my brain. People have a voice. Please use it. So let's talk about what's been happening with the packet over the past few months since we had an update on October from the Comfy Couch.
Yeah, so a lot has happened. You know, things can happen quickly around here. So we had our Planning Commission give their final recommendation back in June, and then we brought that recommendation to City Council. City Council reviewed the whole package, looked through everything, worked on some amendments, some changes that they wanted to see happen in the final package, made a final vote to adopt the ordinance that Home in Tacoma is part of back in November. So they voted to adopt that unanimously. And now we're working kind of behind the scenes with staff to make sure that we have everything set up to get to our implementation date, which is coming up February 1st. So the new zoning codes and the new regulations for housing will be in effect coming in just a couple of weeks.
My goodness, I mean, this, you say it so smoothly and it comes out just like, you know, it was tattooed across your heart because you've been working, you and your team, so hard on this. So your job is also to keep track of those changes. When people are there the first time out and they're in a meeting with you and they hear this, maybe they expect that to be in the final package. Tell us what changes have happened so we're aware of how this is evolving.
Yeah, and the changes are really a result of, like you said, people's voices, right? We had a public hearing at City Council and people were telling us, and City Council members, you know, things that they want to see happen. Like, oh, we want this in our neighborhood. We want, you know, these kind of tweaks made. So definitely listening to those community members, and then Council took those into consideration as they made their final recommendations. So some of the changes that they put into this final packet were some zoning changes here and there to align better with the surrounding zoning, some flexibility to the tree regulations and plantings that are required now on development sites, and some additional incentives for home ownership opportunities. So we really wanted to make sure that people had opportunities for home ownership throughout the city and not just rental. So that was a big piece that Council really wanted to make sure was in there. So that was included in that last amendment, and it was voted on to be adopted.
I was in that Tuesday meeting. So let's talk about the big word that's attached to all of this is zoning. And that's where people look twice and really get out, you know, the magnifying glass to see what is happening. Give us an update on the zoning. What are we going to see? Yeah,
so when you talk about zoning, right, you're really just talking about the rules that say what you can build where. So we changed some of those rules to allow for more housing to be built in different zones throughout the city. So we're replacing some of the residential zones with 3 new, what we're calling urban residential zones. And each of those zones allows more density, more number of units to be built throughout the city. And the higher the density, the more units, we want to put those closer to things like schools, parks, transit, and other things that we consider complete neighborhood features, so that folks can more easily get to the things they need to do on a day-to-day basis while adding those units that we need throughout the city.
So how, and now that we think about, because we've all been starting to think about housing different. You know, you think, at least I do, I drive around and I think, oh, old-fashioned garage, that would be a great place for a couple of senior citizens to live or something. So what can people now build on their property with this new amendment?
I love that because it's really exciting that people are starting to notice like the different
Yeah.
opportunities we have. So in the Home in Tacoma package, there's 5 new housing types that are now allowed in these new residential zones. And some of these, I mean, they're not new in the sense that they're not, they existed before. You can see them
Right.
throughout the city, but now they're allowed in these residential areas. So things like a houseplex, which is basically it can be a single family home, but can have up to 6 units inside.
Okay.
And then things like a backyard building, like you mentioned, something in the back that
We
can
used to
have
call
a couple
them
of units.
ADUs.
ADUs to
Yes.
count, towards that. Row houses, which are like townhouses or
Yes.
lot homes. Courtyard housing, which has some shared amenity space in the middle, and then multiplex, which is also only allowed in the UR3, the higher density areas, and those are like small apartment buildings, and those will be really close to those transit centers and some of those other complete neighborhood features. So these types of housing will now be allowed in more areas in our city.
I love that because the more that we are thinking like this and there's services to help us get through all the permitting of this, the easier it becomes. It no longer is well, yeah, the city hasn't quite thought about that yet. No, the city is
We're
on
trying
it.
to think about a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. So in this last minute, what else is included in that packet that you want us to know about?
Yeah, so it touches a lot. Obviously, zoning touches a lot of how we just interact with our city and our neighborhoods. So included in the package are some parking regulations, reductions in the parking requirements that developers are required to build, so make some additional space for units. There's also some tree requirements that we want to make sure that we're making neighborhoods livable and nice.
The index.
The index, and yes, getting towards that
Yes.
30% goal. So making sure that trees are being included in development sites, and then some affordability incentives, some of those homeownership incentives, and really looking at how we can just continue to create livable neighborhoods for more folks.
That is just so impressive. I love that. All right, so I can't wait to have you back on the couch because the next phase will be after February 21st.
After February 1st is the implementation
Yeah.
date, so it's in effect February 1st. People can start applying for permits, and then hopefully in maybe 6 months, a year, we'll start seeing, what we'll be tracking all of these things.
All right.
We'll see.
Get out your cell phone, start taking pictures.
Yes.
Because when I get you back on this couch, we're going to talk about what
Yes.
people have taken advantage of. Thank you, Alyssa, you and your team so much for all that you're doing to help us have a more livable city.
Thank you.
We have much more to come on Cityline. Don't go away. We'll be right back.